Hello and welcome. Leo and I are so excited to talk to you today about why actions are awesome and what we did to make them even more awesome. We know Dreamforce is slightly jam-packed with really cool talks, so thank you for being with us today. Admins and developers alike, we'll make it worth your while. First, a little bit about us. I'm Liz. I've been a software developer here at Salesforce for a little bit over 2 years now, and I've spent most of that time working on exposing our amazing functionality to all of you via our APIs. Also, a fun fact is that I'm a proud born and raised New Yorker.
Hi everyone, my name's Leo. I'm born and raised in California, and I've spent a lot of time telling Liz why the West Coast is the best coast. A little bit more about myself. So I'm a software engineer and a product owner on the Force.com platform. Been with the platform for a little over 6 years, and I've had a chance to work on a lot of amazing features, custom objects, custom fields. Spent a lot of time working with our globalization tools like Translation Workbench. And most recently, I've been focusing on our process automation tools and actions, which is what we're here to talk about today. So, obvious slide that you can expect. Safe harbor, we're going to be talking a lot about exciting things. Some of it's available now, some of it's coming in the near-term future. But please make your purchasing decisions based on what's available in the app today. With that, hand it off.
So what's an action? Walking, talking, grabbing a cup of coffee, those are all actions, right? Okay, but what about in the context of Salesforce? So before I answer that, we'd like to know who we have in the audience today. So if we can get a quick show of hands for our developers. Cool. And admins. Nice.
Nice.
So how many of you use the Salesforce One mobile app? Awesome. It's really cool. I highly encourage all of you to check it out. This is a screen that you're probably familiar with as well. And these are the publisher actions that we all hold near and dear to our hearts. So you can post a text or a file to Chatter, log a call, and create new records. Now, this is also an older screenshot of what actions look like in Salesforce One. If you saw in Mark's keynote yesterday, that's a taste of what actions are going to look like now, and we'll show you that later on as well. How about workflow users in the room? Woohoo! This is a screen that you're familiar with, and these are the actions that you can perform on a record when it's created or updated and meets certain criteria for your rule. We also have actions in our visual workflow product, which we'll tell you more about later on. And lastly, we have actions in Apex. So if we take a look at all these sets of actions, why is it that they're all just a little bit different? Like in the Apex example, the signature for performing a quick action or submitting a record for approval is different. Or why is it that I can post a Chatter from my phone, but not from Workflow? Why is it that Salesforce gives you the ability to do really cool and useful things from all these different contexts, but every time it almost feels like interacting with something new? So let me ask you a question. If an analytics action got added tomorrow, would you know where to go to learn how to use it, how to code against it, where it's exposed? So is there a problem with our actions? There is a problem. There's a big problem. These action heroes seem to think so. The problem is that these actions aren't consistently exposed. So there's actions in one UI and not in the other. There's actions that aren't available in the UI at all, like firing off flows or triggering Apex. And actions in our API are all just a little bit different. The point that I'm trying to make is there isn't one shape or one common roof for all these actions to live under happily. So Leo, what can we do about that?
We can solve these challenges with a unified API for all actions. We want to build one roof for all actions to exist under. And what this means is one consistent API shape for all actions and consistent actions exposure throughout the Salesforce One platform. So let's take a look at what this means for our developers in the room and our admins. In our API, we first focus on providing a common action invoke. And this solves the pain that Liz alluded to, the pain of having to learn a new method call signature for each newly added action. Now, you can perform a quick action using the same exact method call as posting to Chatter. Next, we wanted to deliver an action describe. And an action describe is really cool because now you have a mechanism to programmatically learn all the available actions on the Salesforce One platform. Perhaps more importantly, you also have the ability to get detailed information about each action's input and output parameters. That way you can know how to invoke each and every Salesforce action. And because we're building on the Salesforce One platform, The common action invoke and action describe will be exposed in REST, SOAP, and Apex, so you can use the protocol of your choice. And we didn't limit our work to just the API. We focused on unifying actions in the UI to make it easier for our admins and developers to consistently interact with all Salesforce actions. In Salesforce 1, as you saw in Mark's keynote yesterday, we revamped actions so they now show up in a unified action bar. And this gives you now the potential to customize and order your standard edit button and put it in between two quick actions. And our declarative tools, like Visual Flow and the new Lightning Process Builder, we focus on adding and exposing many more actions. And we're going to talk a little bit more about these tools later in the session. Lastly, and I'm really excited to talk about this, we focus on the treatment of actions as buttons. So who here remembers what the two largest words were underneath the unified action roof? Apex and flows. So actions as buttons will now enable admins and end users to be able to fire off flows to complete a complicated process or invoke Apex to work with a third-party system, all from the push of a button and all within Salesforce 1. So those two red arrows, those are pointing to flow and Apex actions, even though they look like buttons, which is pretty awesome. So, pretty awesome. We got the cape going. So, a unified API with a common action invoke and action describe, with the treatment of actions as buttons, all with the ease of customization as today's quick actions and custom buttons. This is the solution we're here to showcase today.
So here's our plan. We've got two great demos to really put to life what Leo was just talking about, to show you what the Actions API can do for you and how. First, we're going to interact with actions from a third party via REST, and the action we're going to highlight is the revamped post-to-chatter action. This one's going to be a little bit more code-heavy for our developers in here. And then we're going to take a look at what we mean by actions as buttons by invoking a flow from Salesforce 1. So let's get started with a story. A couple of months ago, I was traveling in Rwanda, and I was volunteering and living in a rural village, teaching English, carrying my own water up and down the hills, all that good stuff. And I was going to sleep one night, and suddenly I remembered something really important that I had to tell Leo. And the deadline for Dreamforce talk proposals was the next day. But I am in a village halfway across the world without internet connection. How am I going to reach Leo, who's in San Francisco? Now, what I do have is this highly functional, circa 2000 flip phone. And what I can do is send a text. Now you see the really important information that I remembered to tell Leo was don't forget the Hulk. I mean, it's my favorite slide, isn't it yours? I'm also mentioning Leo and putting in a hashtag for some reason from this text. Now, you might be wondering why I'm doing this in a text message. And the reason is, if we take a look at Salesforce 1, that Leo's got showing for us on the simulator, and we refresh the page, I just posted on Chatter by sending that text. So within a few moments, Leo will have gotten a notification. He will have seen the crucial information that I had to impart on him. He'll put the Hulk in, and our slide deck will be ready for all of you. Okay, so what's the magic, and how did that just happen? Go back to the slides. We wrote up a custom Java app, and this can be in any server-side language, that uses Twilio to receive the text that I'm sending from Rwanda or from wherever else that I am. Then this custom Java app integrates with Salesforce by calling the new publicly exposed REST API for actions. And what's really cool about this slide is that you can strip out the entire left side of it and replace it with whatever all of you are working on and want to integrate and hit the Salesforce actions from. So now I said that the custom Java app calls the REST API for actions. Leo is going to show us the URL that it hits and the actual body that it builds up in order to create the chatter post you just saw.
So this is a screenshot of the REST Explorer in the Workbench tool. Has everyone here had a chance to play with Workbench or knows about it? It is a great tool for interacting with the Salesforce API. Definitely check it out at workbench.developerforce.com. The REST Explorer, as the name suggests, allows me to easily interact with Salesforce's REST API. And so here's an example of using the common action invoke and our REST API to post to chatter. Let's focus on the JSON body first. You can notice that 3 parameters are specified: text, subject name ID, or ID, and type. Text captures the message that I want to post. Subject name or ID indicates what feed I want to post to, and type indicates the feed type. And so in our example, I'm going to post that message to Liz's feed, and her feed type is of user. And so that's an example of using that common action invoke to be able to post a chatter through our Actions REST API. And by posting that URL, of course. I also want to highlight that text value that we displayed up there. So you notice that's pretty similar to what Liz typed into her phone and what ultimately showed up in the feed. Let's compare this to the other way that you can post a chatter today, via the Chatter API. The Chatter API is a rich, powerful REST-based API that exposes the full functionality of Chatter. With that power and functionality, though, comes complexity. And today, to post text with at mentions to Chatter, you have to build up a not super simple JSON REST body. And we've heard your feedback that posting to Chatter with at mentions should be simpler. The Chatter post action solves that by allowing you to post text with at mentions in line. And the way that we did that, as you can see up here, is that we have a special text format, the at mention and open and close bracket, with the specification of an ID. You may remember in the slide with the text that we posted via username. So in our Java application, we leveraged SOQL to resolve that username to an ID. And now we can post at mentions and topics to Chatter with the text format that's similar to what you'd ultimately want to see. So that's the Chatter post action. Now imagine if you're going to use the Chatter post action for the first time, though. How would you know what the parameters are? How would you know what each parameter is used for and which are optional and which are required? And we want to be able to do this programmatically. We don't have to go and read the doc. We're developers and admins here. You can do this by leveraging the action describe. So by performing a get instead of a post on the same URL, I get back all this additional information about how to leverage this action successfully. With Chatter posts, I can learn that there are 3 input parameters, again, text, subject name or ID, and type. But I also learn about I also learn about the fact that there's an output parameter called feed item ID, and that's the ID of the feed item created. With the action describe, I also get a lot of additional metadata about each parameter. So if we zoomed in on text, I can learn that Chatter text posts have a max byte length of 15,000 bytes, which means that's the longest message you can post with. I have description, label, name, and type to learn more about these parameters' purpose. If this is an enum-backed parameter, I have the picklist values attributes to learn what the valid enum values are. And max occurs. Max occurs is cool because now I have the ability to know if this parameter expects a single element, where max occurs is 1, or an array, where max occurs is greater or equal than 1. And that's how I can also know what the maximum array size I can pass in is. This is the action describe, and this is how I can successfully invoke programmatically each and every Salesforce action. So we talked a little bit about the common action invoke and the action describe. Let's focus on the URL a little bit. So all the actions I've been talking about are exposed in REST under the actions root node. And this is part of the effort to provide a unified root, one place for you to look at. There are 2 types of actions, standard and custom. Standard actions are the type of actions that you can use out of the box. They're ready to go. And with the Winter 15 release, we're exposing 3 types of standard actions. Submit, which is submit for approval and works with our approval engine. Chatter post, which you just saw. And email simple, which allows you to send an email from Salesforce. Custom actions are actions that you have to build before you can use. And quick actions are a great example of that. You have to build your custom create contact, or you have to build your change case status before you can use them. With the Winter 15 release, we expose 3 types of custom actions: quick actions, email alerts, which are workflow email alerts, and flows, which are visual flows. And so that's cool because now you can invoke visual flows, headless flows, auto-launch flows, you may have heard of that, from our API. Now some of you may be wondering, especially developers, isn't there already a REST endpoint for performing quick actions? And you're absolutely right. There are actually several actions you can invoke today through our REST API. Looking at those endpoints up there, you can post to Chatter through the Chatter API. You can submit for approvals, submit records for approvals, and you can perform quick actions. There's also a URL servlet to kick off visual flows with screens. The tricky part with the current day REST API shape is that it's difficult for REST API users to discover current and new actions. Also, each action's JSON body is just a little different, making it hard to be able to transition between actions. The work that we did with the Actions REST API is unifying all these actions under the Actions root node. So, as Liz mentioned, if a new analytics action came tomorrow, you know exactly one place to go and traverse down to figure out all that you can do with Salesforce One, or with the Salesforce One platform. The JSON body shape is also consistent across all these actions, so you don't have to worry about learning a new way to post. What this all amounts to is one consistent API shape and consistent API exposure, one unified roof for all actions.
Switching gears a little bit, let's take a look at what we mean by actions as buttons. And for this, I have another story. Let's pretend I'm no longer in Rwanda, which in fact I'm not, and now I've turned into a hiring manager, and I have a new employee starting soon. And whenever somebody starts working, there's always a bunch of things to request. Login access, badge access, a computer, a laptop, a mail folder, the works. What I could do is file a request for all of those manually for every new employee that I have. But in this day and age, shouldn't there be a better way? What I'd like to do instead is build a flow, using the visual workflow product I mentioned earlier to automate this process for me. What would be even better is if I could do all of this tedious onboarding on my phone, on the go, while I'm running in between meetings during the rest of my really busy day. And now we're telling you that you can. Let's take a look back at the phone that Leo's got showing for us. And this is that new action bar that we were talking about that you saw in Mark's keynote yesterday as well. So if we click on the ellipsis and scroll down, we configured this action bar to have an action called Employee Onboarding available for you. So if we click on that, we get a screen that asks for information about our new employee. First name, last name, email, and our employee is going to be a tech employee today. On the next screen, we're going to give internal access because we have a developer and we want them to code all the really cool things. We're confirming, and now the flow is done. So what did that actually do? Well, if we take a look at the Employees tab in Salesforce One and look at the most recently created one, that's the employee that you just saw Leo put in. And what's really cool is if we take a look over here, there's 3 tasks for payroll, for a new computer, and for giving internal access. I just made my life so much simpler by being able to do that from the phone. Let's go back to the slides and I can show you the flow that's behind all of this. So this is the Flow Designer, and this is the tool that we use to build the flow that you just saw Leo go through on his phone. We start up at the red arrow, and it proceeds through in a snake-like fashion. So we have screens that allow for user input, which you saw, decisions, which condition based on that user input to do different actions. So for example, if Leo had specified no for grant internal access, then there would not have been a task to grant internal access to this employee. And of course, we have the actions. This is how going through that flow allows us to create the employee and the associated tasks. So what's really cool about this demo is that we just took all of this complex processing, the screens, the decisions, and the actions, and it can be as complex as all of you dare make it. And we put all of that in an easy-to-use button in Salesforce One. So for an end user, it's just as easy to click Edit as it is to post on Chatter, as it is to kick off this complex process. But now if we remember, there was one other big word in that house icon we showed you, which was Apex. So not only can you fire off flows from a button in Salesforce One, but you can also trigger Apex. And for this, I have just one final story. That's me, because I'm cold pretty often, and I do wear a lot of layers. What I'd really love to be able to do is have a button on my phone that allows me to change the temperature in the office to my desired comfortable temperature of, like, I don't know, 80 degrees. Sounds good, right? So let's pretend that Thermostats R Us, or maybe Honeywell, who you saw featured in Mark's keynote yesterday as well, releases an API that makes it possible to alter the temperature. So now as a developer, my job is really simple. All I have to do is write up some Apex code that'll hit the Thermostats R Us API that'll change the temperature. And now, thanks to the work that Leo and I have been talking to you about today, with a little bit of configuration work to the action bar in Salesforce One, I get a button called Change Temperature available right next to the employee onboarding button that you saw Leo click in the demo just moments ago. But now let's take this just one step further and think about what this means for me if I don't know how to code, but maybe you do, and maybe you work at Thermostats R Us. So you could write up the Apex code that's going to change the temperature, package it up, allowing admins everywhere to download it from the App Exchange, install it, and with a little bit of configuration work, give all of their end users this nifty, easy-to-use button in Salesforce 1. So we can extrapolate this to no longer be about some mythical Thermostats R Us API and about me being cold. This is actions no longer confined just within Salesforce to your feed or to workflow. These are actions that interact with the world around you. Now, for the last part of our session, we want to take you through some R&R, and before that can actually mean rest and relaxation, let's take a look at the roadmap and recap.
So the roadmap, we talked about a lot of exciting things today. It's going to take us several releases to fully deliver this vision. With the Winter 15 release, we expose the action invoke and the action describe in the REST API. We also have 3 exposed standard actions and 3 custom actions. Over the next several releases, in the Actions API, we'll be adding SOAP and Apex support. We continue focusing on delivering actions as buttons so that you can include flows and Apex in the unified action bar in Salesforce 1. We'll also start working on unified layout configuration so that you can finally put that edit standard button right after the quick action and right before the custom button. We also want to expose actions in SOCL so that now you have another way to slice and dice and get the actions that you care about and just the actions you care about. Over the next several releases, we'll also be working on providing a lot more actions into our API. Apex and Work.com Thanks is coming soon with Start Journey Builder, which is Marketing Cloud's Journey Builder app product, or Marketing Cloud's Journey Builder product is an action we want next, as well as the ability to post a notification. Also, we're looking forward to seeing a lot more App Exchange actions come about. And App Exchange actions are the actions that our rich community of ISVs and partners are going to develop, that each partner subscriber orgs can then leverage. Now the event service. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the event service and our plans for building that out. We spent a lot of time today talking about the what, the things that you can do on the Salesforce 1 platform. We haven't spent much time talking about the when, the signals that you care about to trigger off these actions. Workflow rules and Apex triggers are the de facto triggering mechanisms today of the Salesforce 1 platform. But they're limited. They can only listen to record create, update, and delete operations. The event service is a solution that decouples triggering from DML events. No longer do you have to do workarounds like update a fake field to trigger off additional logic. You can now, from an API call, fire off a record create event to trigger that additional logic. And what's even cooler is, with the event service, you should be able to listen to the Facebook status update event or tweet received event to then trigger off your actions. A lot of exciting stuff. So how are we going to get there? The event service is first going to be based on a standard publisher-subscriber model so that you can register and listen to the events you care about. But we also want to deliver a polling service so that you can more easily work with third-party APIs without having to configure a callback. We'll focus on exposing standard DML events first so that you can listen on the standard record create and record update events that you care about. But we also want to give you the ability to create custom events that you can fire off and listen to on in your own code. Action groups are also important. They're going to allow you to be able to trigger off not just a post to chatter, but a post to chatter, send email, and fire off 3 Apex actions when a Facebook status update occurs. And synchronous and asynchronous listeners will finally allow you to be able to build scalable solutions to fire off longer running actions. Another thing I want to highlight is that you can expect a lot more tools to be consuming this action API. And one consumer I want to highlight is the new Lightning Process Builder. You've seen this around the dev zone if you walked around. It's part of the Lightning Apps demo. It's one of our marquee Lightning apps. And what this is, it's a highly graphical, highly usable way to build triggerable processes. Think of it as a workflow 2.0. It's built on the visual flow engine, so you get all that power. But you have a lot more structure and guidance to help our declarative admins build their business logic without having to invest a lot of time learning this tool. So with any process automation tool, the actions, the things that it can do really drive its value. And the Lightning Process Builder is a consumer of the Actions API we've done so far. As you can see, all the actions we've mentioned so far are supported with a process builder. And because they're consuming the common invoke and common describe, any new action that's added to that framework will also be consumable by this tool, dynamically expanding its power and functionality quickly over time. And imagine all the app exchange actions that are coming online. The process builder can now fire off those as well.
So we've been talking to you about a lot. And if there's just a little bit that we want you to walk away with, it's this: the house, the one unified roof for all actions. The problem that we saw was that actions weren't consistently exposed. And we saw that with different exposure in our UIs and different call signatures in the API. So what we did about that is we gave you a unified API that gives you one source of truth with a consistent API shape with a common invoke and describe and the same actions everywhere. And the reason we care is just like we gave you a taste of in the demos, this now completely unleashes the potential of the Salesforce platform. And now, it's your turn. No talk about actions can be complete if you don't take action as well, right? So what you can do right now is go into the workbench and play around with the URLs that are all under the unified actions node that you saw Leo go through before. What that means is you can build your own version of the Twilio demo. And don't let your teammates forget about the Hulk or any other project-saving ideas. Also, start thinking about what actions you'd like to expose as buttons in Salesforce 1. So you can build flows and write Apex to help your hiring managers onboard employees much more simply, or any other grand task your organizations ask of you. And if you work at Thermostats R Us, please get started on that hacking the temperature action. I would definitely start using it. Thank you.
And so we'll be here, I think we have about 10 minutes left to take questions. This is also the resource slide we want to highlight it. Bunch of bit.ly links to a lot of useful resources that we've been talking about throughout the presentation. There's also the visual flow product that Liz talked about. There's a session tomorrow at 10 a.m. in the morning. You got to know when to flow them. A great introduction to learn more about flows and our declarative kind of programming language that it is.
And the platform keynote, I believe, coming up.
Yeah, the platform keynote is also
now,
at 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, well, thank you, everyone. We'll be here. And have a great day. Last big day of Dreamforce.